And other things, again, terror attacks for
$7 billion. Next. Again.
He insured the Center Against Terror Attacks for an amount of $3.5 billion. And later on, when he was attacked by 2 airliners, he thought that he should have $7 billion because there were 2 attacks. And he almost got that. Almost. The other thing he did was to exchange the company responsible for security for another company. And what we are going to see here is an interview done for public broadcasting system called America Rebuilds, where he is asked about Building 7. Immensely, and now we're here. Public Broadcasting System, American Rebuilds, and Larry Silverstein.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander. Told me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. The response thing to do is pull. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander saying that they might not be able to contain the fire. And I said, well, we've had such a terrible loss of life, maybe the smart thing would be just to pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. That was what Mr. Silverstein said. But unfortunately, to pull it, it's laying among demolition workers to bring down the building. So the next day, his press secretary released a message saying that what Mr. Silverstein had meant was that the fire department commander should pull down his people, should pull back the operation. But there were no firemen in the building, and there hadn't been any since 11:30. There was somebody in there at 12:30, but the whole operation had been pulled back for more than 5 hours at that time. Now the other thing, if you're interested in language, in the end, what Mr. Silverstein says, they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. And then we watched the building collapse. So the last half of his statement is related as a cause, as a consequence of the first part of the sentence. They made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. What is Mr. Silverstein seeing for his inner view when he said, and then we watched the building collapse? We're seeing the building collapse as a consequence of making the decision to pull. Okay? Now, so you might anticipate or think that what I'm into now is a new hypothesis called controlled demolition. And if you're interested in controlled demolitions, you can go to a webpage called How Stuff Works, where you can see many interesting things. Among them, how you implode buildings. Now the first thing to do is to get the architectural blueprints, of course. And next, what people do nowadays, they develop 3-dimensional models, mathematical models of the building, not only to determine where the loads are and the strengths of the components, but also they can put in charges in this model to see what the consequences of the explosions will be. But it is not only a matter of mathematics and computers, it's also an art very much based on intuition. So the experienced blaster go through the buildings many times and make their decisions. Like tipping over a building, like the last demolitions I showed you before, is not considered anything, or pulling over a chimney, just like felling a tree. It's not considered with any respect. But to hit the footprint requires such skill that it's only less than a handful of companies in the world who actually can accomplish such a feat. Now, in order to demolish buildings, you need some tools. These are explosives. Now we are getting into the explosive business. Dynamite is an old-fashioned and well-known material, and it's very good for concrete. It's slow. You bore a hole and you light the fuse, roughly. But if you want to take down steel beams, you need something more sophisticated and modern. The most common thing for this purpose is the stuff abbreviated RDX. Why it's called that, I don't mean. But here's the structure of such an explosive. It's called cyclotrimethylene trinitramine. Now this is really nasty stuff. The burn rate is running at a speed about 23 times the speed of sound. So actually the explosion wave breaks the sound barrier that many times. So this is really something that hurts the ears. And here you see they come in something formulating called beam cutters. And here you see such two demolition workers mounting two beam cutters on each side of such a steel beam. And an explosive works by force, by pressure. It knocks the thing over like that. So what obviously the reason for mounting it in this angle is that the weight of the beam should make it slide down, and they can have consecutive beams here, all triggered at the same time, so the whole building actually moves aside and then go down. And then somebody have found it remarkable that some of the steel beams appearing at ground zero after the collapse of the towers. I don't know about building 7 at this point. This is from the towers. Was cut at the same angle, actually. And there's been some dispute about this picture as to which time it was taken, but these are firemen going, and they're looking for, sadly, they're looking for the remains of their colleagues. And this they were allowed to do up until September 29th. So it must be a fairly early picture. Now, I'm going to show you, regarding explosives, a video by a physicist called David Chandler, the same guy who did the calculation on the tower. And this is, I would say, it's self-explanatory. And what you'll see here is taking the sequence of the collapse of the North Tower and recycling.
The starting point of science is observation. What you are seeing here is what happened to the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The second of 3 buildings to collapse on 9/11/2001. I use the word collapse. Words can be deceptive. What do you really see happening here? There's a tremendous amount of falling debris. But under the canopy of debris, you see the rapid sequence of explosive ejections of material. Some of the jets have been clocked over 100 miles per hour. I will call them explosions because it's hard to find other words to describe what we are seeing here. The explosions are not isolated and diffuse. They are continuous and widespread. They move progressively down the faces of the building, keeping pace with the falling debris. Perhaps you can imagine a natural cause, but I can't. Notice that the explosions are occurring on multiple floors at once, over a wide zone, not in a floor-by-floor sequence that might be explained by pancaking collapse. Notice there are explosions far below the point of collapse. Some are isolated and focused. These are often referred to as squibs and are commonly seen in controlled demolitions. However, this is not a standard controlled demolition. The building is being progressively destroyed from the top down by waves of explosions, creating a huge debris field. The destruction is in waves, not just in one wave. Most obvious is a rapid sequence of explosions near the visible corner of the building. But simultaneously, we can see another wave of explosions much further down the face of the building under the canopy of falling debris. Notice that both waves of explosions progress down the face of the building, nearly keeping pace with the falling debris just a few feet away. Slabs of concrete did not fall to the ground and smash to dust. There is almost no concrete in the rubble pile. Notice that the concrete is being forcefully ejected outward from the sides of the building, already pulverized to dust.